Morning everybody, and welcome back to the second video in the Canine series of my story. And we'll talk about quite a few things today. And there was a lot of great and a lot of bad. I've often said in talking to people that I know and in writing and stuff that it was the best job that I ever had in the worst fucking environment I've ever been in. And I worked at that point in uniform and non-uniform positions. I'd worked with other agencies. I'd worked as part of a shift in uniform. I'd worked in a specialty unit, um, in plain clothes, and so all of those things sort of each brought their own individual type of dynamic or politics to the table. Um, and I had heard of what things were like in the canine unit before I became a quarry and as I became a quarry. But of course, when you're in a unit and experiencing it firsthand, a lot of the shit that and rumors that other people hear about, when you see what's going on, as a firsthand live witness sort of thing, it's a whole other story. Experience it for yourself versus hearing it from someone else, even from a trusted source. It's just so different when you're there live. So I had heard that going in that there was an investigation, or there was a rumored to be an investigation going on at that time or coming down the pipe into allegations of wrongdoing, both internal and possible criminal charges involving some of the supervisors or a supervisor while there. But of course, I wasn't privy to all of the facts or anything like that. And it would take some time before I would see and hear more things. So I'll get into that in greater detail a little bit later. But there's also a lot of things about being there that weren't necessarily a part of that investigation. But let's start with the good, because first of all, so Maya and I had gotten validated as a team, and I was just fucking stoked to get going and starting to have some success. And it's a very different thing working on your own or by yourself as opposed to part of a larger shift, be it in uniform or in plain clothes. When you're the one guy or the guy for that position across the service, and although I had learned a ton from my predecessor and gone out of my way to research that job from start to finish, um, you know, it was still, when you're the guy and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now go and take your shots. Well, that's something else. It's a whole unique kind of pressure because the unit's looking at you, the supervisors are looking at you, and people across the service now know that you're that guy in that spot. And so people are looking at you to succeed. And I think I was about as best prepared as I could be. And I had the proper experience to back it up. So working in canine as a drug dog handler is very different, of course, from the tracking dogs or the general purpose dogs, tracking and apprehension. You're essentially hunting drug dealers with a furry best friend, someone who's way better equipped to detect drugs than you are. And that's certainly the partner that I had in Maya. But in some ways, we were very, very alike, driven and determined to succeed. And so it was just freaking awesome. And so I had a lot of freedom to go out and hunt drug dealers in every way possible. And obviously having, a street base or a project base experience to traditional drug investigations is an absolute necessity. Having that in terms of the experience of me being able to spot drug dealers while I was out and about in a dog handling capacity. A lot of that work being the majority of it being based on self-initiated interdiction work. And interdiction work is different in that it's not relying on informant information, yours or somebody else's. You're literally going out and hunting and developing it yourself, watching for the things that that you'd learned taking courses, or that you were taught through practical experience. And so there's a lot of ways of doing that. Working, the routes coming into a major city, looking for traveling criminals, and stopping a shit ton of vehicles. You stop 100 of them, you might get one good one. And sometimes you don't find what you're looking for, and sometimes you don't got enough to push the investigation or the traffic stop forward, and sometimes you do. So there's a lot of easy or dead giveaway or gimme investigations, but bottom line, no one can legitimately say that this is what a drug dealer looks like, or this is the kind of car a drug dealer uses. So you're really working numbers and stopping a lot of cars, and each time assessing the person's behavior, looking at what your computer checks say, using that in combination with the behavior you observed and with the training courses and the practical experience you have. So it really is interdiction work really is a way of individually building each case on its own merits, combined with your training and experience and with the observations you make at the time. And so yeah, working both just the both ins and outs of the city, and going to private courier companies and building relationships with security staff or loss prevention staff or managerial staff there, because you're not just stopping vehicles or spot checking people. A lot of that work is also checking suspicious parcels or luggage, be that at courier companies or at the airport, and you're pounding the pavement. You're putting in the steps to get success. It's like playing hockey. If you're not taking shots at the net, you're not going to score. And sometimes they go in, sometimes they hit the crossbar, and sometimes you're not sure whether or not you got a goal. And so that comparison will hopefully help you get a picture a little bit about what interdiction work is like. But it's essentially spotting suspicious people, vehicles, or parcels at any mode of transportation, a bus, airplane, rental cars, and that sort of thing. And then stopping and talking to the people, asking questions that you can ask, gathering information or intelligence by doing computer checks, and then observing their behavior. And you have to, it takes a long time of a trained eye to develop that. And so I was excited, but also like starting something new. Like when I started in Vice, I was very self-conscious of failure, and I had a strong urge and desire to succeed. And it took quite a few weeks. I want to say 3 or 4 weeks, I think, till I had my first deployment of Maya. I'd helped out at some search warrants and stopped a lot of cars, but my actual deployment, the first deployment, came when I was out just outside the city monitoring traffic at the perimeter, when I got a phone call from a detective in District 6 who phoned me about a vehicle they had stopped. A suspicious driver, a lone occupant of the vehicle that they had detained, and they suspected that the guy would maybe involved in the possession and or trafficking of drugs or similar related offenses. And I knew that officer a little bit, and he'd been an experienced officer, relatively senior at the time, had done time in uniform and in plain clothes. At the time, he was a detective out in District 6, and he knew me as well and was aware that I was the new K9 guy and aware of my experience. So I think that made him feel comfortable that Dan is somebody that I want to call. And that makes a big difference. If people know you and personally and know your body of work, of course that helps when you're starting in a new job. And so I got down to the traffic stop that he was at Corridon, and spoke to him and his partner, and observed that they had a male outside of the vehicle that had been detained and advised to his right to counsel, which is required for a canine drug dog deployment, and not enough, and not enough of the right people know that. Um, those are the rules that you have to play by, or your case is going to shit. Um, and so I had gone and done a walk around the vehicle, looking in, to making sure that there's nothing dangerous on the exterior or the interior to Maya, because ultimately, even if all the conditions are right, it is the handler's individual or the handler's decision as to whether or not ultimately they're going to deploy the dog. That's who decides. Never anybody else, and never does anybody else handle that canine. So I had brought Maya to the front of the vehicle, and shortly after started a search of the vehicle. And immediately, as she got to the driver's side door, she had detected a scent cone on the crease of the door, sort of the bottom corner, and indicated. And detector dogs in general will either sit or go into a down position to indicate that they've detected an odor that they recognize. So as soon as she did that, I didn't immediately go to arrest the person. But what I did is I took her around the rest of the vehicle, because there may well be drugs in many locations, or she may indicate on the odor and other places than just one. And it's all just really a part of doing your job thoroughly. You don't, when you're in a house for a search warrant, once you find the drugs, you don't stop. Everyone keeps looking everywhere until you've covered everything. So she indicated at the outside of the door, and the windows were closed on that car. And then I went over and arrested the male. Put Maya back in the car, because what's required once your dog indicates, that's your ground to arrest, because she's the proven reliable source, whatever, he or she. And before you go into searching the car or opening the door to put your canine in, of course, you can't do that. And there are people out there who need to know that. You can only deploy your dog on the outside of the car. She indicates, then you can arrest, then you have to arrest the person and put your dog away, and then you can search the inside of the car. So I was just fucking pumped. Lord knows what I was going to find. Of course, the dog tells you that they've recognized an odor, but they can't tell you which odor it is. All you know is that they've indicated. So I put her away, opened up the car door, and I could, when I sat down in the driver's seat as I was searching the vehicle, I could see about a dozen or more foil wrapped rocks of crack cocaine. This vehicle had in the center console an emergency brake, one of the lever kinds that you would pull up, and the guy had stuffed the rocks of crack cocaine down the center console. So they're like on the floor of the vehicle and in between the two seats, and she detected the odor from the outside of the car, which is just, it's so simple, but so fucking amazing to watch a dog work. She did as she was trained. She recognized the odor from the outside of the car. This despite the fact that he had a couple of air fresheners in the door, one hanging from the rear view mirror. Some of the typical things that you see when you're doing interdiction canine stops, or traffic stops in general. So I recognize those as tricks of the trade, but it was just, yeah, and we had trained for that, but it just blew my mind for the first time to see her do it. And no big fucking drug case, you know, one dial-a dealer, and it wound up being, I think, about 15 rocks, crack cocaine, some cash, a scale, all that usual paraphernalia shit that goes with a stop. But it was just simple, beautiful, and perfect for our first stop. And that does a huge thing for boosting your confidence. And the reward that Maya got, you know, and the high praise, because that's what you want to do. You want them to be excited and happy about the next one, and they remember when you congratulated them. So that was just absolutely fantastic, and I wish I still had some pictures of that I could show you. um, but I don't, unfortunately. But yeah, it was we wound up getting a conviction for possessed for the purpose of trafficking, and we were off to the races. So, that's just one successful step, like a rookie's first goal in the NHL. So I was just thrilled, and hey, on to the next one. I've always been thrilled about any seizure, whether it's grams or ounces or kilos or pounds or whatever, and then the next one was one of the places that I went to regularly was the Via Rail train station, because as we all know in our world, uh, weed comes in from the west, and not a lot of coppers look on trains. There's not a lot of investigative work that's done involving that, in terms of traditional vice or organized crime investigations. And so one night when I deployed my in the passenger, or not the passenger, in the luggage car of the train, she indicated on 2 suitcases, and I seized close to 64 or 68 pounds of weed. It was still legal at that time. And so I was just, yeah, thrilled as a pig in shit. And I have a picture at the beginning of the video of that seizure. And again, it's just, it seems so simple in nature. Let your dog go, and she finds something, and boom, I had made the biggest seizure, self-initiated individual on my own. I want to say that was in August, and I had started in May, and that was my first big um, multi-pound bust. And I just remember thinking, like, holy fuck, for the amount of work done, just getting up into that luggage car and deploying my dog, yeah, it was just awesome. And that was the first of many at Via train station. And so quite naturally, when you find a honey hole, you keep going back. And yeah, so I got a lot more good stories like that, and I'll share some more, and some ones that are both, high in terms of the amount of drugs seized, but also really interesting cases that led to things completely not drug related, but that occurred because I was out there looking, in the corner of the boards, digging for that puck, and that was just so much fun. So, yeah, we'll get down to the downside of being there, at least at the very beginning of it. I'm getting close to the 20-minute mark, and I want to keep everybody's attention span before I move on to the next video. But it was quite clear after just a few months of being there, the hierarchy and structure of the supervisors within that unit. An old friend of mine once said, egos and empires. And this place was clearly a fucking case of both. And it was just disgusting. And that wound up affecting three of my closest best friends and cops that I fucking admire. Tenacious, hardworking, button-pushing, problem-solving cops who have a ton of respect. Cops who in many ways are better than I am, or who have been more successful than I am. Cops whose true desire to hunt criminals, to catch bad guys, has always been the driving force behind their desires to work in K9. One of them had gotten hired at about the same time as I did, had been quarrying for a lot longer and putting in a lot more hours as a quarry than I did, who went to become the only female handler in the unit at that time. And I'm going to focus on her a little bit later, because she got fucked over royally and treated like absolute shit by guys who weren't fit to be leaders, guys who were given their ranks in a promotion specifically designed to expand the unit. Guys who exhibited, guys who didn't know how to manage people. There's just no other way to say it. Both of them, in their prime, were the best fucking dog handlers that were out there. Hardworking, successful, fucking good at their jobs, but complete assholes when it came to managing people. And they were people who built and wanted a unit of ass-kissing followers who didn't make any waves, who didn't offer any resistance, who didn't speak their mind, and went along with the status quo. I think it's fair to say that anybody who knows me knows that I've never been that way. I'm not that kind of person. And neither are those two people that I'm going to talk more about later. Two people who did not get what they deserve, despite what some other handlers had said about them. Two people who would have been a lot better and a lot more productive had they gotten what they'd worked for, had they been treated properly, had they been received properly. And I don't want anyone watching this to think that everybody in that unit was part of that clique or clique, however you pronounce it. But and there certainly were good people there. There were a couple, 2 to 3 people that I liked, people that, okay, they weren't the best dog handlers, they weren't the most successful, but they worked hard, they had integrity, and they deserved better given the amount of effort that they put into it. And it was just a fucking crying ass shame. That place has always seemed to be just one of those places that is riddled with problems. Although I hope that there's some sunshine in the near future. I hope that a couple of the people that are there now, one who I don't know very well, but one who I do know fairly well, that I have a lot of respect for, I really hope that they turn things around. But they've got a lot of work to do. So before I go any further into that, I think I'll just end it here for today, because we're now getting close to 24 minutes. Some of you might be drifting off into La La Land or waiting for things to get juicier. And I will do that. Don't worry. Always keeping in mind that I'm going to respect people's privacy by not naming names, and also, you know, I can only really, I can't say what it would be like to run that unit myself, because I don't know. I wasn't in that position, but I do know that there were some people there who shouldn't have been handlers, and who shouldn't have been supervisors of handlers. And one last comment on that supervision part. When you're there, or in any place as a supervisor, your job isn't to be the one that fucking shine. You're not the star anymore. Yes, you have a dog and you handle that dog in that dog's specific task. But your job is to develop others, because you've had your time in the sun as the guy or the girl. And sadly, while I was there, that was something that was pretty much lacking completely. And unfortunately, until this day, with 1 or 2 people, they're still there because they want the glory, not because they want to produce better canine cops than they were. And that's where the focus should be. So I hope that the current supervisors there are able to really turn things around, because that should be a great fucking place to work, not just a great job. Take care, guys, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.